My name is John Adams, co-founder of A Foreign Affair, and I want to welcome you here tonight as we discuss our topic here, which is going to be a little bit about how to keep that flame going once you do meet that special person. We talk so much about meeting that special someone and all the different things that we do to help you try to achieve that goal, but what happens once you meet her, all right? And there's a lot that we can talk about around that, and I'm happy to do it tonight. I'm also here to answer your questions. That's first and foremost. You know, we started this kind of exchange, this forum, oh gosh, almost 20 years ago now. And it's just something that we've been doing every Monday night. And it's kind of evolved to where it is now, and I like it. It's on a webcast. We don't have quite the interaction with the live phone calls that we used to, but we do have you guys typing in your questions. And so if you do have any questions for us here, please type it in and we'll be happy to get to it tonight, and I'll answer as many of your questions as I can. And if I can't, then I'll let you know and you can call in tomorrow and we'll get the answer for you. But I should be able to handle most of these, I think, so I don't think it'll be a problem. All right. I want to give a shout out, first of all, to all the guys that are on our current Peru tour. We have a tour going on right now in Lima, and congratulations to all of you that are down there. That is an amazing tour, guys. I think Lima is like one of our kind of like hidden secrets or hidden treasures. We don't get as many men going on that tour, and I think that's a pity because it is just such a cool experience to go to Lima and see all the fun things that are going around down there. And so there are guys there right now, and they're just had their socials over the weekend. I talked to Sarah, the office manager there today, and she said things went very well. And all the guys are out on dates and doing the things they're supposed to be doing. And that's what this is about, guys. This isn't for men who just want to be in these virtual relationships and be keyboard Romeos and, you know, constantly just doing the texting back and forth, the letters, the chat, all that. You know, our site is really dedicated to those guys who want to have a real relationship, who actually want to go over and meet these different women in person. And you won't find really any other sites out there that will help you to actually achieve that, of meeting that person. Yeah, they'll help you do letters, they'll help you do chat, they'll do all that, but are they really trying to get you to go and meet the women in person? Not so much. But that's always been our mandate since we started back in 1995, and we'll continue to do that. Try to help you get from point A to point B so you can have a meaningful, real relationship instead of one of these virtual deals, okay? And I know it works, guys, because I did it. I was lucky enough to meet my wife, Tanya, in Russia 20 years. Well, it'll be like 21 years, or 22. No, it'll be 22 years, I think, this July that we actually met, because we've been married now for 19, soon to be 20 here, coming up in February. So, yeah, pretty cool stuff, guys. Pretty cool stuff. All right. We do have some questions. That's great. If you're looking at the screen right now, you can see where you can type in your questions, and please send me as many questions as you got. I love answering you guys' questions. That's one of the things that I like about doing this show. Bud's the one that's usually doing it, but Bud was just in Maryland along with Anna doing our seminar that we just had, and I haven't had a chance to talk to him to see how that went, but I know we had a lot of guys that RSVP'd for that seminar in Maryland, and so he is on his way back from the East Coast and is not able to do the show tonight. That's why you have my smiling face here. And I'm happy again to answer any questions that you have. And guys, don't forget about those seminars too. I think it's next week that we have one going up in Dana Point. I believe it's next week, but it's awful close here that we have the Dana Point area, at least, seminar happening in California. And Bud and Anna will be on that one as well. Is that next week, Kirk? Yeah, that's next Saturday, I believe, or Sunday. So check that out on the website under seminars, and you'll get the address to that. And guys, the seminars are such a great tool for you to implement it. Again, if you're serious about meeting that special someone in person. If all you want is a virtual relationship, then, you know, don't bother. You know, keep writing the letters or doing the chat or stuff like that. But if you want a real relationship, then the seminar is an excellent way to get started. They'll give you a ton of information about all the different questions, all the different things that you can expect to happen during your tour. Plus, they give you great discounts for seminar-only discounts for being there during the seminar, and food and lunch, and it's just a great bond building experience too, because there's other men that are there, and you soon discover that you're not alone, that other men out there are sharing the same feelings you have, the same ideas you have about international dating and about making this decision to broaden their horizon, to broaden the scope of who they're trying to reach. And there's nothing wrong with that, although sometimes you'll hear that from others saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're going halfway around the world to meet a woman. And my response always to that is, I can't believe you don't. I mean, why wouldn't you? My gosh, this is the most important decision you're ever going to make. That decision of who you're going to choose for a life mate, both on your side and the woman's side. And why wouldn't you explore every opportunity to try to find that right person? It may turn out just to be a great vacation. It may turn out to be an experience of a lifetime, and then you end up marrying someone maybe in your own backyard, ultimately. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But at least you tried. At least you explored. You gave yourself that opportunity. Same with many of the women that attend the socials. Bud talked last week about why some women attend, why some women don't attend, why they're on the site, those kind of things. And just because a woman joins a site like ours, knowing that she's going to have the opportunity to meet men from foreign countries and whatnot, does not necessarily mean that she's going to marry someone. It just means that she's exploring that opportunity, just like you. And it's fun, it's enjoyable. And if you are at a point in your life where you can avail yourself to an opportunity like this, why wouldn't you? And so the next time if you're talking to someone about, your thoughts about doing a trip like this, and they give you a little bit of a hard time about it, just so easy to turn the tables and say, well, wait a minute, why wouldn't you do something like that? Okay? All right. Let me get to a couple questions here. We do have just a couple here, but guys, feel free to ask. Happy to answer any questions you have. So, this is coming from Jeff, and he's wondering, how do the young women find out about the tour events? How far away from the event locations are they traveling from? Great questions there. So, again, we've been doing this now for 23 years, and so we have a really good reputation in all of the cities that we operate, and our socials are very well known among the women that have joined our service. And so they look forward to it, whether it's a month from now or 6 months from now or even a year from now. They kind of mark it on their calendar. They know those socials are coming. But as it gets closer, we do invite the women, obviously, to these events. They have to be invited. So our office staff will actually call them. And the women that we're calling, how do we come up with that list? Well, it's really based on a few things. One of them is you guys, the men on the tour, because we ask you to give us a list of 20 or so women that you would like to meet while you're there, either at the socials or individually. And then we do our best to invite them either to the socials or for a one-on-one introduction. Okay, so part of who comes to that social is determined by the men that are going to the social. And then we also look at the demographics of the group, and we'll invite women based on that as well, the age and things like that of the men that are attending. So we have a very well-balanced group of women there, so for you to be able to meet. So that's partially on how that works. The second part of the question was, how far away do they travel? Well, really depends. Most of the women, let's say we're doing a social in Odessa, okay? Most of the women are going to come from in and around Odessa, maybe, 40 or 50 miles outside of Odessa, suburbs, things like that. But when you start getting to other cities, say, Sumy or Kyiv or something like that, and you're in Odessa, most women are not going to get on a train or a plane and travel down for the social. And again, it's invitation too. We have to invite them. So we're not inviting women from other cities to come. But if you're writing to someone, you have correspondence with someone that you would really like to meet, and there's a chemistry, there's a foundation there between the two of you, then it's very possible that woman may travel from a different city, from halfway through the country to come and see you. A lot of times you'll have to help her with some kind of transportation costs or something like that, but it's not a big deal. It's very inexpensive over there. So that can happen, but usually if women are going to travel that far away, there's some kind of a foundation already set. There's already communication going back and forth, and she feels comfortable with coming. But you got to be careful too. inviting someone to a social from outside of the city, because if she does come, then you're going to be somewhat responsible for her because you asked her to come, and maybe you helped her with a train ticket or a taxi or a plane or something like that, and maybe she's going to have to spend the night because it's a long ways away and the socials don't even end until 10 or 11 at night, and so you're probably helping her with a hotel room, and she's just you're going to feel somewhat responsible and to make sure that you spend time with her. But if you meet her at the social and there is no connection, it can be awkward. So you got to be careful about that, inviting women that you have never met before, because you're going to be meeting so many different women at these events that you don't want that to be a distraction. Okay? All right. Another question I have here from Kevin. John, can American Express travelers checks be cashed in Ukraine? I mean, can they be accepted? Yes, you can actually bring American Express traveler's checks if you like. They're a little bit of a pain, okay, because you're going to pay for the American Express traveler checks, and then you're going to bring them over there, and then you got to get them cashed, and then they're going to charge you a little bit on that side as well. It used to be, when we first started 27 years ago, a lot of guys would bring the traveler's checks, and it was a safer way to actually bring money, bring cash, and I get that. And you can still do that if you like. But credit cards are pretty well accepted now in most of the places that we go. So if you have a credit card, it's not an American Express, by the way, because they really don't like American Express in most of the places that we go, but Visa and MasterCard is really not a problem. So if you can bring that, you can pay for a lot of your items with that. And then you bring some cash as well. You want to have cash. And if you feel more comfortable bringing the checks, that's fine. But if where we go, there's normally safes in the rooms, and so a lot of guys will just bring cash with them and go that route. So whatever you feel more comfortable with, that's fine. But yes, you can bring those. All right. Okay. Let's see here. One of the things, and I'm going to get to your questions. You guys are starting to ask a bunch of questions here, and that's great. So just keep watching, and I will get to your questions. I will try to get everyone's questions before we leave here tonight. But I did want to talk a little bit about long-distance relationships. Guys, long-distance relationships are not the easiest things in the world to do. Right? We spend a lot of time talking about how to meet that right woman, right? Whether it's the tours or the one-on-ones or whatever it is, but we have this whole huge infrastructure set up in order for you to meet that right person. But what happens when you meet that right person, right? How do you go forward from that? And how do you keep that flame alive and growing, right? And build that relationship when you're halfway around the world, right? It's not that easy, but again, it's really not that difficult if both parties are really into it, right? And that's the key. Sometimes guys will talk to me and they'll tell me, I'm just not getting much response. It's so hard because it's this international deal here and she's so far away and I'm really not hearing from her much. Okay, well, that may be partly because it is a long distance relationship, but it also may be partly because she's just not that into you, okay? Because it takes two to make this work. And if you're not getting the same amount of energy from her that you're putting in a relationship, there's going to be a problem. There's going to be a disconnect somewhere along the way. Okay, so we got to keep that in mind first of all. But having said that, and if things are good there, then there are certain things that you can do to make sure that things still progress the way they would if she lived in your city and you were able to see each other at least a few times a week, right? So first of all, and guys, I speak from somewhat of experience here because I met my wife, like we talked about here earlier, 20-some years ago. And, it was a year and a half before we got married. And for a lot of that time, I was here in Arizona and she was there in St. Petersburg, Russia. And I'll tell you, the first time when we first met, and I spent, days with her, and I fell in love with her when I got on that plane and I came back to the United States. It was the longest plane ride of my life, okay? I mean, I still remember it. I mean, it was like I left a part of me in St. Petersburg. It was sad. I mean, it was like, oh my God, I just want to turn around and go back and be with her. It was that, it really was. It was amazing. And I will tell you that today, you guys have so much more than what we had, 20 years ago. in terms of infrastructure and logistics to keep things going, that it's just so much easier, I think, because you have Skype, you have Viber, you have these things where, you know, the calling back and forth is totally free. You can FaceTime with the woman, you can, you know, do Skype and you can see her right there. I couldn't do that. You know, it was emails at best, back and forth, or getting letters from her in the mail, right? So a little bit of difference, but there are some principles that remain the same. And I'll say also, with all this technology that you have to be careful, I think, number one, not to smother her, right? So you come back and, you know, you're all excited and everything, and you want to, you know, do a Skype with her, and that's great. And you do that, and things are going well. And then the next night, you want to Skype again, and you try to contact her, and maybe it's, I don't know, 10 or 11 o'clock at night her time, and you're calling her because it's in the morning your time, and she's not there. Some guys will start to kind of freak out a little bit, and they'll start sending texts, well, where are you? How come you're not answering me? What's going on, right? And you start to smother her, and she starts to feel like she has this obligation to do this talk with you instead of her wanting to do this talk with you. And there's a huge difference between an obligation to do something and her wanting to do something, right? So you've got to keep it somewhat light, especially at the beginning when this is a very, very new relationship. You don't want to assume anything. You want to make sure that, you know, she wants to do these Skypes as much as you do, and she wants to be involved as much as you do, but you also don't want to smother her. So, you know, you just keep it kind of light and somewhat short. You know, it's natural. You should be able to feel when, you know, she's busy. Because remember, guys, she has a life before you met her, and that life just doesn't change because you met her and now you're back here. She still has the responsibilities. Maybe she has a child, maybe she has parents to take care of, maybe she has a very demanding job. All these things that don't change just because you met her. And so you got to keep all these things in mind when you're dealing with her and figuring out the different ways to do. But there are kind of cool things you could do together. Like maybe you like the same kind of TV shows or movies, and there's ways to actually watch those together now with all the recordings that we have and Netflix and everything. And so if you're online together or texting together and you're watching the same movie together, that's kind of neat. It's like you're almost there together, but you're you know, sharing this experience of watching a TV show or a movie, or maybe you're going to binge a series or something like that, and you do it together. That's kind of cool. So that's one of the things that I think, you know, can work. All right, I'm going to get back to a few tips here in a minute, but let me keep going here with Jeff. And Jeff actually brings up a good point about cash. He says that he wants to remind everyone about how they will often reject bills with tears, or old bills or worn out bills. And you're absolutely right, Jeff, and I don't think I mentioned that when I talked about the cash, but whenever you go over, and these are things that we talk about in the orientation before you go as well, and what to bring and what not to bring. One of the things that we discuss is that you always want to bring new bills, because when you're traveling abroad, or, you know, in whatever country you're in, a lot of times they're going to look at the money you bring, US dollars, and if they're not in pristine shape, they're either not going to accept them or they're going to discount them, right? So they're going to charge you a penalty for giving them a ripped bill. So do your best to bring over new bills. I can't tell you how many times I've been in a situation over, you know, the last 20 years where, you know, I almost ran out of money because the bills I had were not so great. Now, part of that sometimes is because I'm helping out the guys on the tour, so I'm taking their bad bills and giving them my good ones. So by the time I'm ready to go, I'm almost like broke. But that's what we do. We help wherever we can. All right. Let's see, John, was there any changes with the K3 visa or the K1 visa? Not to my knowledge. Let's hope that nothing's changed. As far as I know, the K1 visa, what we call the fiancé visa, is still pretty much the same as it's always been. The only change, which took place probably a year ago or so, was the filing fee for it. The K1, I know, went up from like $455 to like $535 or something like that. But the K1 is still pretty much the K1, and all the same rules apply as far as I know. And the K3 visa is what we call a spousal visa, and that's if you're going to actually marry her there and then bring her back to the United States as your spouse. And as far as I know, that hasn't changed. The fee may have changed for it. I'm not sure about that, but you know, that's, I believe, still the same. All right, Stephen, thank you for the question. I appreciate it. All right. Let's see here. We have another question here from Robert. Robert is going, let's see, I'm signed up for the September tour. What are the questions I can expect to get, and what are questions I should not ask? What are some really good questions to ask? Well, those are all good questions, okay? And it's funny because, you know, when you're here, you're going to the tables, you're going to have what we call your wing person. Your translator, your matchmaker, you know, she's all these things in one. And it's almost always a woman, right? And she's going to be helping you go from table to table. So what you really want to do is for, you know, a few minutes before, sometimes you even have an hour or so before the social starts to actually talk and get to know your wing person, right? Who's going to be helping you to navigate from table to table and help to get the women that you're interested in, get their contact information, and maybe even set up dates with them for that night or the next day, right? So a lot of guys will go out with the woman they meet at the social that evening. So it's a great idea to really give as much information about yourself to that person and tell her all the things that you're really curious about or interested about, because a good question for you may not be the same good question for someone else. You know, you have to start thinking about the things that you're really interested in as far as who it is you're looking for, like children, for instance. You know, are you looking to have more children, or are you interested in someone that has children, right? Because if maybe you're not, maybe if she has children, then that's a deal breaker for you, and you really don't want anybody that already has children. So that would be an important question to ask fairly soon on, because if she says, oh yes, I have, you know, a 2-year-old, okay, that's great, but then you're not going to show her as much interest anymore, because basically she just disqualified herself from your search. But another man might be very interested in that, and that's a plus for him, right? That's a positive. Oh yeah, okay, great, you have a child, and now he's moving forward that way. So those kind of basic questions are really important. One of the questions that you're going to get asked quite often that a lot of guys are not ready for is, why are you here? Why are you sitting at this table? Why aren't you back in, you know, Philadelphia or Los Angeles or you know, Dallas, Houston? Why aren't you back there looking for, you know, someone to spend the rest of your life with? What brought you here, and why are you here? And what you probably don't want to say is, wow, those women back home are just awful and terrible. I mean, you know, because, you know, you never want to come off as being negative. And that's kind of a negative answer. You want to be honest, right? You might say something like, well, you know, I just haven't been lucky enough to find that right person I'm looking for, and I'm searching the world over, right? But the last thing you want to do is start talking negatively about anyone, really, because women don't want to hear that, because then you start turning the whole thing negative. So I'd be careful about answering that question that way. You know, so think before you go, because they're going to get asked that question, especially if you're going to Russia, Ukraine, but if you're going to Colombia or Costa Rica, these women are pretty straightforward, right? Pretty much everywhere we go. And they're going to want to know what you're doing there, right? Why are you there? Are you really serious? And that's another question you're going to get, guys, quite a bit, right? They're going to get, are you really serious? Are you just here to play? What's really going on, right? And look, I know, because I'm on a lot of these tours, and I know the vast majority of you are really serious. You're really looking for someone to share your life with, someone, you know, and that's why you're doing this, right? If you weren't that serious, then you'd be playing back home or doing stuff, because there's a lot simpler ways to be not serious than go on one of our tours. So I think the vast majority of the guys that go on our tours are really serious, but you sometimes have to, you know, let the women know that, and so think about that a little bit as well. All right. And then, you know, questions not to ask her. Well, things like, you know, you want to know how old they are, right? So normally you would say, well, you don't want to ask their age, but, you know, in this circumstance, because things move so quickly, you know, you can ask that. You can really ask the age, at least an age range. Now, what will usually happen is they're going to come back and say, well, how old do you think I am? And guys, let me tell you, just always guess on the younger side, right? So, you know, you don't want to try to be one of those people at the fair who are, you know, trying to guess someone's age exactly or someone's weight exactly. You always want to be very complimentary, and you want to guess, you know, a few years younger, and then she'll smile and say, oh no, I'm actually whatever she is. And that's usually a nice way to break the ice and move into it, okay? All right. All right. Let me keep going here. Lots of good questions tonight so far, guys. It's wonderful. We have a question again from Jeff, I believe. Do many of these young women have passports? Are they able to travel on a tourist visa, or is there an expectation of marriage, visa, immigration paperwork? I did not see information on the profiles that list when they were last active. How frequently do you get newly interested young women to submit their information? All good questions. Let's start with the passports. Well, yes, most of the, well, depending on now where we're going, because every country is a little bit different, but like in Eastern Europe, they have two passports actually. They have what's called an international passport and a domestic passport. And that's the case in some of the other countries we go to as well. And so everyone has a domestic passport, and a lot of what they do in their lives is reflected in that passport. And then if they're going to travel abroad and outside their country, they're going to have to get an international passport. So not everyone automatically has an international passport. Think the United States. There's a lot of people here who don't have an international passport. So no, not every woman has an international passport, but they can get one, and it's not that difficult. Can they travel on a tourist visa, or is there an expectation of marriage? Okay, so for the vast majority of destinations that we go to, it is somewhat difficult for the women to obtain what you would call a regular tourist visa. A visa, you know, someone might get just to come and visit the United States for vacation, you know, go see the mouse at Disneyland, all that, right? A little bit difficult for them to get a tourist visa because our country wants them to demonstrate a very strong propensity to return to their country. So they have to show things like a very good job, a lot of money in the bank, leaving, you know, property behind that they own, those kind of things, so that, you know, when the officer is adjudicating that application, they're going to look at it and say, okay, yeah, it looks pretty strong, all these different factors, and that maybe she's traveled before to foreign countries and has returned and didn't violate any of the visas. So they're going to look for all those things, and if they see all that, then they're more apt to grant the tourist visa. But a lot of times the women cannot demonstrate all the things that they're looking for, and the tourist visa will be denied. So it's really not so much about the marriage. I mean, yeah, if you walked in and, you know, you're saying, yes, you know, we want her to get a tourist visa so she can come here, we can get married, they'll tell you to go get a fiancé visa because that's what it's for. But if when she applies for a tourist visa, she just goes in and she has the right to go in and apply for a tourist visa to be a tourist in the United States. And, you know, she's either going to get it or not get it on her own merit, okay? You know, my wife, for instance, when I first met her, we thought it'd be wonderful if she'd come over on a tourist visa, you know, see if she liked the 180,000 degree summers that we have here in Phoenix and all that kind of stuff. So we thought, okay, cool, we'll go try and get the tourist visa, and boom, she got denied. And then ultimately we did a fiancé visa. Just because she applies for a tourist visa and gets denied, it does not negatively impact her application for a fiancé visa or a K-1 visa. And the vast majority of women will get the fiancé visa and be able to come here for that 90-day period where you decide at that time whether you're going to get married or not. If you do not get married, she would have to go back within that 90 days. Okay? All right. And you had another part of that question here, and that's the information on profiles. You know, as far as the women being when they were last active, okay, our site's a little bit different than some of the other sites out there where people are writing back and forth constantly online and things like that. So, you know, when a woman's profile is posted on our site, you know, you can normally assume that it's active, although that's true. It's a possibility that, you know, maybe she's met someone and we just haven't found out yet and have not been able to take the profile down yet. But we do a pretty good job of contacting the women on an ongoing basis. Now, we're not calling 40,000 women every day and saying, are you still active? Are you still active? But we do have quite a bit of contact via the correspondence that we do, the gift deliveries that we do, the socials that we do, because we call a lot of the women to attend the socials, and when we find out that they're no longer active, we'll remove them from the site. So that's kind of how that works, okay? And I know that we remove women every day from the site, and we add them once a week. Every Wednesday is our update day, and that's when we're adding the new. So yes, we often, to the third part of your question, we often get women that are interested in joining the site, and we add those new profiles every Wednesday. All right? Okay. Question here from Donald. Hello, the July 12th to July 28th Ukraine tour. Ooh, you're doing the big one there, the dual one. That's great. So, you know, guys on our tours, if you look on the the tour schedule, you'll see where we have the Kiev tour, which goes to 3 different cities, by the way. That's Kiev, Kharkov, and Sumy. And then right after that, we have the Odessa tour, which also goes to 3 different cities: Odessa, Nikolaev, and Kherson. Some guys couple those 2 together because you get a great price with us when you do that, and you do the whole thing, the 6-city tour, which is what he's talking about here, which is an amazing opportunity. I mean, that's 6 different cities, 6 different socials, 200 to 300 women at each social, even more at some of the socials. It's mind-boggling. And it's not for the faint of heart, let me tell you. You have to be pretty strong-minded, and you have to have a pretty strong constitution to be able to handle all that. But it is such a great experience. So anyways, the question was, where was this? So the question was, and the other says, what city do you fly into and fly out of from? Okay, so on the duals, on all of our regular 1-city tours, in Eastern Europe, where we have multiple cities, right, 3 cities or 2 cities, we always get you back to the city you flew into, except when you do the dual tour. So when you do the dual tour that I just talked about, when you're coupling the 2 tours and putting them together, then you fly into the first one that starts, which is in this case Kiev, and you're going to be flying out of the second tour city where that started, which would be Odessa, right? So you're flying into Kyiv on this particular one because that's the start of the Kyiv Kharkov Sumy tour, and then you'll be flying out of Odessa because that's where you're going to end up at the end of all that, because the Odessa starts that second tour with Odessa, then going to Nikolaev and Kherson, and then we come back to Odessa, right? And that's where that tour ends. So that's where that last tour ends. That's where you would end up. So when you're doing your airfare, if you're a dual client like that, and you're doing that particular tour, you can do one of 2 things. You can either fly in to Kyiv and fly out of Odessa, right? It's called an open jaw ticket. You can do that. Sometimes the airlines will charge you a little bit extra for that ticket. So another variant would be to fly, just do a round trip out of Kyiv, and then when the tour ends on that Saturday in Odessa, we can help you with either an airline ticket or a train ride back from Odessa to Kyiv, so you can get back to Kyiv and then fly out like the next day, let's say. Okay, and a lot of guys do it that way because it's a little bit cheaper just to do the one round trip ticket into one city instead of coming into one and flying out the other. But if you can find a good deal where you can come into Kyiv and fly out of Odessa, that's great too, whatever works best. But that, guys, if you could do that 6-city tour, that will be something you will never forget. It is such a cool experience. You're seeing all these different cities. Just to travel alone is amazing. And then you're meeting all these wonderful women and all the different guys, because you'll meet guys on both the different tours. Bud will be leading that. He'll be there the whole time for that entire duration, and Bud's a fantastic tour leader. So that's going to be a really fun tour. But a word of caution, if you're thinking about doing that tour, you may want to sign up for that soon, because we're already getting close to capacity on both those, the Odessa and the Kyiv tours. So if you're thinking about doing either one of those, try to get your reservation in within the next week or so, because we're getting close. We're about a month out right now to the start of the Kiev tour, right? That's the 12th, and today's what, the 9th or something like that, or 10th? So yeah, we're getting close on that one, and we're getting close to capacity as well. All right, let's keep going here with the questions. I think we are getting close here. We have a question here from Sean. Columbus, Ohio, plan to attend the Cleveland, Ohio seminar. You know, Cleveland is my birthplace. I actually lived there for quite a few years before moving out here to Phoenix. I mean, I've been in Arizona for many, many years, but as a child, I was in Cleveland. So I'm going to be the one, I think, going back to Cleveland to do that seminar. I'm really looking forward to that. Will you be broadcasting live Ukrainian women during the seminar? You know, I try to do that whenever we can. It's a little bit far in advance right now for that seminar to tell you for sure. I don't want to give you any misinformation here, so I can't promise you that, but I definitely try to do that. One of the last seminars I did, we had a broadcast from Odessa. So during the seminar, you know, we had our Anna, who's our office manager in Odessa, and she had about 5 or 6 women from the Odessa area that came into the office, and we did this live Skype with the women looking out over the audience, because they could see us, we could see them, and they were looking at our group that we had assembled for the seminar, all the men, and we had about, I don't know, 30 men there or so, and then we had these women, and they were asking questions back and forth to each other, and it was so cool. one guy got up and he got down on one knee like he was going to propose to the woman. She starts laughing. It was hilarious. So yeah, it's really fun when we can do it. It's a lot of work for the other office, and the time differences make it difficult. So we don't do it all the time at all the different seminars. It's always special when we can. So I'll try to keep that in mind for Cleveland, since Cleveland holds a very soft spot in my heart, and see if we can make that happen with Anna or one of the other office managers, either from the Ukraine. We've done them from Thailand before. We've done them from Latin America, whether it was Colombia or Costa Rica. We've had the women there too. It's a little bit easier because the time frame, the time distance difference is not as great as it is going to Eastern Europe or China, let's say, or even the Philippines. And guys, don't forget about the Philippines too. You know, a lot of times on these calls, we tend to gravitate a little bit more towards Eastern Europe because we have just more questions and whatnot towards that. But I'll tell you, Philippines is such an awesome destination. And if you get a chance to go there, we have so many Filipino women here that work in the office that met and married our employees. And they're just wonderful to be around. Great, great people. If you get a chance to get to the Philippines, I highly, highly recommend it. Well, here's a question here from Dan. I'm interested in meeting a woman from the Philippines. I understand Bill of AFA is married to one. Do you think you could have him on some Monday night for a talk? We can definitely do that. And you know, that's one of the people I was just thinking of before I read that question. So you kind of read my mind. Yeah, Dan, we could have Bill on one of these nights, and Bonnie as well. You don't want just to see Bill. It'd be much more pleasant to see Bonnie. She's much better looking. But we could have Bill and Bonnie on and talk about their experiences, because she's been here now for quite a few years. They're building up a beautiful young family and doing wonderful together. So it'd be great to have them on. And yeah, I'm sure you know, but we also the first Wednesday of every month, we do a special Filipino call with Greg and his lovely wife, who's also from the Philippines. So, you know, there's that you may want to tune in to. I don't know if you've already tuned into that and want to just get a different perspective, which is fine. We also have Marlon, who married Robert, who also works with us as our tour specialist. So, you know, there's lots of different people that we can have on the show. But if you ever want to call in and talk to any of these people, and you can do that, just call in, talk with Bill, and he can give you advice. You can even talk with some of the women here from the Philippines. Happy to do that. Okay. Let's keep going here. Why does AFA never go to Lviv? We would love to go to Lviv. We've been trying to do that for some time. Lviv is a little bit different. Western Ukraine is a little bit different than Central and Eastern Ukraine in terms of the mindset when it comes to international dating. Western Ukraine is a lot closer to the West, right? It's right on the border there with Poland. Warsaw is very close, and now it's very easy for the women to move around, go back and forth. With the recent change, they don't need visas to travel to the EU now. And it's just a little bit of a different mindset, although we do and are working on trying to do something in Lviv. So I would stay tuned. I'm hoping that within the next year or so that we could do at least a small tour there. And have a little bit more presence there of women that are interested in meeting. But it is a little bit different than the rest of Ukraine, or Russia for that matter. All right. All right. Coming from Kevin, John, is Mariupol, depending on how you say it, safe to go? Not so much still. That's still kind of caught in that conflict with the Donetsk region. You have Mariupol, Donetsk, Lugansk. That whole region is still not so stable and not so safe. We don't do tours there anymore. We used to do tours to all three of those cities, and we no longer do them because of that. The rest of the country is fine. I mean, if you go to Kharkov or Sumy or Kyiv or Odessa, Nikolaev, Kherson, any of the destinations that we currently go to, you would never know there was any kind of conflict going on. Life is normal. People are just going to work, coming home. There's not even any protests anymore. It's kind of sad, really. It's called the forgotten war, really, because, you know, this whole region of the country is still undergoing that almost like an occupation, and it's just depending on your point of view on what's really going on from your perspective. But it definitely changed, and it's not easy to go in and out of that whole Donetsk region. So no, at this point I would not be going to Mariupol. All right. what percentage? This is coming from Ryan. Ryan wants to know what percentage of women at the socials have children. Well, Ryan, I would tell you that my guess would be probably 50% or so. Just off the top of my head here. I could be totally wrong about that, though, to tell you the truth. I guess I'm basing that a little bit on the profiles that we have. Probably a little bit less than that, maybe 40%. Even 35 to 40% of the women may have children, and the rest don't. So it just really depends. And then that really depends, too, on how old the children are, right? Because there are some women that are a little bit older, that their children may be already 18, 19 years old, which, you know, if you're looking for someone, that changes a little bit of the thinking, you know. So she has a child, but how old is the child? The child's, you know, 2 or 3 years old. That's totally different than if the child's 18. So lots of different things to look at there. But yeah, my guess is somewhere around there. But again, it would really depend on the particular social, the particular makeup of the women at that social, what percentage really had children. Hard to say, it really is. Okay. Let's see here. We have another question here from Robert. I want to get to some more of these points about trying to keep those long-term relationships going. I'll try to get that here in a minute. But let me get to this question here with Robert. I love it, guys, that you're out. This is really what this forum was formed for years and years ago, was to answer your questions, right? There's so many questions out there, and there's so much false information out there as well. And we just do our best job that we can of answering these questions in a straightforward, transparent way. So let's take Robert's question here. Robert from Maryland. I hope you were at the recent seminar that we just did there yesterday, Robert. So you're interested in attending one of the socials this year in Ukraine, but the concern is the cost of the translator service after the socials and dating. $20 an hour is pretty steep. I understand that most of the girls don't speak English. Should I learn Russian before, and how much before I go over there so I can communicate with her beyond the socials if I find someone that I'm into and she is into me? Well, if you can do it, I think it's wonderful if you can learn the language. And I think you're correct in wanting to learn Russian instead of Ukrainian. I get that question a lot. You know, I'm going to Ukraine, John. Should I learn Ukrainian or maybe Russian? And I think that you're much better off learning Russian because it's just broader. All the women in Ukraine can speak Russian and understand Russian. But in Russia, they really don't speak Ukrainian. It's kind of like that Portuguese and Spanish deal. So I think you're better off learning Russian if you're going to do that. And if you can do it, that's great. You know, if my wife was here right now, she'd be telling you how disappointed she is in me that I never really learned Russian, or at least I haven't yet. I still keep telling her I'm going to try. She says a parrot could probably speak more than I do after 20 years, which is probably true. I'm terrible when it comes to foreign languages. Thank God I'm blessed with all these wonderful people in our organization who speak English. Whether I'm going to China, or I'm going to Thailand, or Latin America, or Eastern Europe, I'm surrounded by people who speak English, which makes my life much easier, although it does make me lazy because I would love to speak all those different languages. So, getting back to your question though, Robert, as far as the interpreting goes, you know, that's, you know, we've always tried to keep the interpreting right around that 15, but, you know, as time goes on, prices went up somewhat, and it is about $20 an hour if you're going to have a one-on-one interpreter going out on a date with you, which is still a heck of a lot less expensive than what you would pay for a one-on-one interpreter here, you know, to go with you. So, you know, you say it's expensive, but, and I understand how it can add up, but it's really still not that bad. But if you can speak the language, we have a gentleman going on the tour with us here in July who I believe is fluent in Russian, and that's going to help because you're not going to have to worry about interpreters. Another thing, if you're really worried about interpreting, you want to go someplace where a lot of the women speak English, the Philippines, everyone there speaks English, so it makes it much easier. There's no need for any interpreters there at all. But getting back to where you're going, which will be Russia, or excuse me, Ukraine, you know, more and more of the women are speaking English too, which makes it easier. So you don't really have to have that interpreter. Maybe you have her for the first date, and once the woman feels more comfortable with you, more of her English will come out because she's not as worried about making mistakes or looking foolish in front of your eyes, because now she's getting more comfortable with you. And so you might need an interpreter on the first date, second date, but then after a while, she'll start feeling more comfortable and she'll be able to communicate a little bit better. Okay. James is asking when our next Poltava tour is going to be, and that will not be till next year, and that schedule is not out yet, but we are into June, so that schedule should be out by the end of June. So keep looking, and we'll have a Poltava tour, I'm sure, scheduled for next year, at least one. Okay, we just had our Poltava tour this year not too long ago, and it was fantastic. All right. Then we have another question here from our friends in the UK. Love you guys in the UK, by the way. Whenever we have guys from the UK, they were just so friendly, smiling, happy. I can't remember one gentleman from the UK giving us any kind of an issue or problem. They're just, in all the years we've been doing this, with all the thousands of clients, not that we have many that do, but every once in a while, you know, but the guys from the UK are just fantastic. Does it cost less, though, if I'm coming from the UK? Unfortunately, no. It's still the same cost because the airfare is not included. It used to be, it is less expensive in that sense for you because you're only a few hours away. If you're going, say, to the Ukraine, if you're going to Latin America with us, or China or Thailand, then it's a little bit different. But if you're going to the UK, which is like a hop, skip, and jump for you guys and a lot less expensive than for us coming from the US, then in that sense it is less expensive because you'll save money on the airfare. But as far as the overall tour and what we provide, it's the same price regardless of where you're coming from. But we'd love to have you. You guys from the UK are fantastic. All right. All right. Then we've got a question here from Steven, who seems to be an optimist from his question. I love it. How much does it cost for a wedding in the Ukraine? So you're thinking ahead. I like that. I'm my side of the, and let's see, my side of the family pays for it all? Question mark. Well, you know, it depends on how you do it, just like anywhere else. If you decide to marry her in the Ukraine and you live in the US, then you would do a spousal visa to bring her back. I don't always recommend that. Actually, I never recommend that. I think it's much better to do a fiance visa and bring her here so that she gets a sense of what life is really like here first, to make sure that she's going to be happy, so that if she does come over and there's a disconnect and things aren't going well, that it just ends up with a fiance visa that they go through fruition to marriage. But if you do a marriage in the Ukraine and then come here, then you're looking at a possible divorce. If she's not, you know, if there's a disconnect after 30 or days or so, or 90 days, or, you know, you have 90 days on the fiance visa to get married. So, you know, that 3-month period is wonderful because it kind of brings out any cracks that could be below the surface, right? Because you're getting ready to get married, she's here, and if there are issues, they will come to light during that 90-day period, which is why that TV show is so popular. We won't go into that right now because I won't go into that. Yes, so the 90-day deal is really cool. And I think that you could take advantage of it. But let's just say that you do marry there. Weddings there can be, again, as pricey or inexpensive as you want them to be. It really depends what you're doing. If she has a big family and you want to do a church thing, maybe in a Russian Orthodox church, then you're going to have to pay a little bit for the use of the church and that kind of thing. And then a big reception somewhere, if you go to a nice restaurant, it can get pricey, just like it can in the States. It'll probably be less expensive than the States. But not necessarily, just depending on what you do. Okay, so just keep that in mind. And yes, chances are you will be paying for the majority of the wedding. You know, it just depends again on her family and how much they can assist with it, or what they want to do, and all that. So, you know, every case is different, but for the most part, you know, women don't have a ton of money. Most of the families don't have a ton of money saved, so you would probably be the one paying for most of it. All right. Let's see here. This is coming from Sean from Columbus, Ohio. Hopefully you'll come see us up in Cleveland when we do the seminar there, Sean. When do you guys plan on start doing the tours in Mexico? We may try to do one next year. You know, we just, in order for us to do a tour in a particular destination, we need to have a certain number of profiles. We need to be sure that we can perform what we say we're going to perform. And we've always done that in 23 years. We've never not performed. And so we're very careful and somewhat picky about where and when, after we start establishing a certain destination, that we're going to be ready to actually do a tour there. There's a lot that goes into these tours. You know, I know you see the video and it just looks like a party and that's all you guys see, but there's so much that goes on in the background for weeks and months before these events take place. To make them the seamless successes that they are, that we're very careful about when we do these and where we do these. Okay. And then we have a question from Andrew. Do you need a visa to go on the Odessa-Kyiv trip? If so, how long does it take to get? Good news there is you do not need a visa to go to the Ukraine, and that is where the Odessa and Kyiv trip is taking place. So therefore, no, you do not need a visa to attend that tour. You do need a valid passport with at least 6 months remaining on that passport, and that's all you need. And that's one of the reasons why we do so many tours, I think, now in the Ukraine as opposed to Russia. When the Ukraine, because the Ukraine used to demand that we had passports as well, and when they relaxed that and they allowed U.S. citizens and others actually to come in without a visa and only their passport, it just made the travel there so much easier than in Russia. I'm going to be going to Russia myself here fairly soon. I have to, you know, go apply for the visa and all that, you know, in the process of doing that. And it's kind of a hassle and it's an expense, you know, it's a few $100s at least to do that. Whereas, you know, in the Ukraine, you don't need a visa. So the only destinations that we go to, guys, that require a visa are Russia. We still actually do the club tours in Russia, where you can go individually and do a tour in Russia. Some of you don't know that because we're not advertising it greatly on the site. But yes, we still do have an office in St. Petersburg, Russia. And yes, you can still go there and do the individual club tour where you're introduced up to 3 women a day every day. And China. China, if you go to China, you will need a visa for that as well. Okay, every other destination that we go to, it's just your passport if you're a U.S. citizen. If you're not a U.S. citizen, then you need to check with the embassy to see whether or not you'll need a visa to go to, say, Ukraine or to Colombia or someplace like that. Okay? All right. We have a question here from Neil. Hi, John. Hello, Neil. How does the November tour to Kiev compare to the July tour? Social attendance and dating, those kind of things. I don't think there's a huge difference other than the numbers. There's going to be a larger group in July than November because we always get more men that go over in July. So there's going to be more women there in July because there's going to be more men there. So the group will be large. It always is in July. As far as the dating goes, there's really no difference. You know, you'll be able to date the different women that you want to date, just like you would in November and July. There's really not that much of a difference. The only thing I would say is sometimes in July, some of the women may be on vacation themselves, right? Because that's a big vacation month for them as well as for us. So some women that you may want to meet, that you haven't really written to, that you haven't told them you're coming, that they're not making special plans to meet you, may be outside of the city for that particular time that you're there in July. They may be at their dacha or doing something else themselves. So that's a possibility. I mean, it's possible in November too, but July is just a big vacation month world, you know, all around the world. So that's a possibility. But other than that, there's really not that much of a difference. Again, the size will be larger. We'll have a much larger event, I think, in July than we do in November. But other than that, really not that much of a difference. Okay. We have a question here from David from Rochester, New York. Any future plans for a seminar in New York, preferably the western part like Buffalo or Rochester? You know, we did one in Buffalo quite a few years ago. My wife and I did one there, and it was really cool. I'm not sure in New York, I know we have one coming up in Boston, which is fairly close. And I know we're going to Montreal. But I don't think we're in New York. Kirk, aren't we going to, like, it's not Maine, but no, I guess it's the Boston and Montreal, about the closest that we get. And that's on one weekend, Boston, and then we go up to Montreal. So other than that, for this year, we're pretty well set on our seminar schedule. If you go and look, that's where we're at. But definitely we'll get back into the New York area next year. I loved that area when we were there last time. You guys were so warm and friendly and inviting That was my wife and I were both there, and it was really, really great. But that was a few years ago when we did that. So yeah, I'd love to get back there, and I'm sure we will first part of next year. But the seminar schedule, guys, is set for the rest of the year. And I don't think we're going to be adding or taking away any of those dates. I know we won't be taking away anything, but it is set for the rest of the year. So if you want to check that seminar schedule and see if there's any place that's close to you, or come see us. Take a little road trip, you know. It's not that far from Buffalo to go over to Montreal or to Maine, or to Boston. You know, and it's a nice little road trip, and you get to see us and have a great seminar and get the seminar only discounts. That'll pay for your road trip, so it's a great deal. I can't tell you how many guys will fly in to the seminars that we do to see us, whether it's here in Phoenix or Vegas or Los Angeles, but I always do a little bit of a poll to see who came the furthest away to see us, and I'm always surprised how far away some of the guys will come to attend some of our seminars. All right, let's see here. I'm not going to get to our topic tonight, unfortunately, and it's a shame because there was some really good stuff here. I'll have Bud try to talk about this a little bit next week if he can. I'm terrible when it comes to this. I just love answering all you guys' questions, and we have a lot more questions here, and we're getting close to time here, so I want to get to your questions. So, you know, the only thing I can tell you a little bit before I'll answer these questions, but kind of wind up on the topic thing here about how to keep your romance going, your long-distance romance going. Guys, first of all, you got to make sure you have a good base. That's the most important thing, because if the base is there, everything else can grow from that, right? And I only go on my experience, and I also what I've seen over the years, and I've seen a lot, I really have. But from my experience, when I met Tanya, there was such a great connection we had from the very beginning, and I knew that I wanted to marry her from the very beginning. And I think she knew that she wanted to marry me. And it was easy for us to make that relationship work, even from thousands and thousands of miles away. I mean, because we were always thinking about each other, and I would receive letters from her in my mailbox in Russian that she would, you know, make little notes on in English so I could understand them, right? The cards, these Russian cards that she would buy. It's not in my email box, in my postal mailbox at my house. I mean, almost every day I would get a letter from her. And that's just showing me that how much she cares. And then I would be calling her all the time, or I would try to send her special little gifts or things like that. And every time that one of my friends or partners were coming back from the tour, or one of the clients were coming back that knew me, she would always meet with him and send back a little care package for me. And we're not talking about money, guys. It's not about money. And she never gave me anything of value when it comes to like a monetary value, really. I mean, you know, a watch here or something like that, but I'm talking about gifts from the heart. You know, things like this little stuffed animal that she made for me that I still, to this day, 20 years later or so, I still have on my desk, because it meant so much to me that she took the time to knit this thing. At least she says she knit it. I'm still believing that she actually knit it. But anyways, knit this thing and actually sent it to me, right? And with a nice little card, there's a little story behind it we don't need to go into, but those kind of things are the things that make you just grow closer together. It's not buying the rings and the jewelry and the dresses and all that stuff is just, you know, no, it's the real stuff, the small things, the things from the heart that grow the relationship. And I don't care if you're right next to each other or you're thousands of miles away, you can do those kind of things. Be creative. That's another thing to keep that fire burning, is be creative. Guys, I had to be immensely creative to get Tanya to marry me, because I'm not the best looking guy in the world, okay? We all know that. You see me, okay? I can't hide it. And I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I'm not the richest guy in the world, right? So you gotta do things that kind of show your feelings, and not be afraid to be creative and take a little bit of a chance and a risk to do certain things, right? And I don't have time to go into some of the things I did, but I did some crazy things, okay? Some funny things, but some crazy things, and it got her attention. And that's what you want. This isn't a job interview. This isn't, I pick you, you come with me, this is it, we live happily ever after. No, they want to be courted. They want to be loved. And you want to be able to do that. And that's part of this. That's part of the fun of this. That's part of your life, the adventure that you want, right? You're not doing this just because it's easier. You're not doing this, oh, I can just go over here and get married and be, you know, no. It's, you want that love. You want to be able to remember that 20 some years later. I mean, we're going back to Russia this summer, and we're going to go to that one restaurant that's still in business, by the way, that we had our first major romantic date at. And we're going to go back and relive that. And I'm looking forward to that because I remember what I ordered. I remember what the smells were like. I remember what the weather was like. I remember what the music was. And I don't know if I can recreate the weather, but we're going to relive that whole thing. And it's going to be really, really cool. And I'm looking forward to it. Those are the kind of things that I talk about, and it's so important. All right, I'm getting too much on my soapbox, so I'm going to go back to the questions now. John, can you talk about the China tour and how the ladies are? The ladies are amazing. In China, we don't get to talk about China that much, but you know, the guys that go to China and come back tell wonderful stories. Kirk has a great video that we did of a gentleman that came in here that went on our China tour. He wasn't even looking for someone. His parents just made him go on a tour to be safe, and then he goes on our tour and he discovers how wonderful the women are, how open they are, how they want to show you their city. And so they were taking him around because he's at first just wanted to do sightseeing, and so they're taking him around and showing him the whole city. He had date after date after date, and he just thought it was the best thing since sliced bread. And he wasn't even really looking for it. So the tour itself is fantastic. I mean, it's a lot like our other ones. It's going to be 7 or 10 days in duration. You're going to stay in one city in Shenzhen. You stay at a great hotel right on the Hong Kong border, by the way. So when you get your Chinese visa to go into China, you want to make sure you get a dual entry visa so you can sneak out and go over to Hong Kong and experience that for the day, or maybe spend the night there and then come back. Literally, it's only a 30-minute drive from our office to, not even 30 minutes, from our office to Hong Kong, right? So that's really cool part of that tour in Shenzhen. And then, you know, the city itself, Shenzhen, is just epic. I mean, this was a sleepy fishing village 40 years ago, and now it rivals LA. As a matter of fact, it makes LA look like a sleepy fishing village because it's just so new and vibrant and stuff going on. I mean, if you're going over to Shenzhen expecting rice paddies and those funny little hats, think again. This is pretty amazing modern city, and a lot of the women there are somewhat affluent. They do pretty well. So, you know, that's probably, I would say, of all the destinations that we go to, the women are most affluent there. So really neat. Wonderful women. The office staff there is amazing. They do a great job. You just, you know, difficult to go wrong with that China tour. Okay. Let's see. I agree with I'm scared of China. Would like to know more. This is coming from Jack from YouTube. Jack, I don't know what you're afraid of from China. We've been going there for many, many years. We've never lost anyone yet. As I always say, who didn't want to be lost. There's some guys that don't want to come back. But I've been there multiple times. My partner's been there multiple times. The people are extremely friendly. The government, if you're worried about the government really, you know, they've got other things to worry about than us. So if you're not going over there trying to start, you know, any revolutions or major things like that, I think you're going to be just fine. So I wouldn't be too worried about China. It's great. All right, John, on that 712 to 728 tour, do you provide transportation from Kharkov to Odessa? Absolutely, Don, we do. That's all included. So whatever's going on within the tour, we always provide transportation for. So we will get you from that one tour that ends in, you know, that one first tour to the start of the second tour. We'll get you there. I'm not sure exactly how they're doing the transport on that yet, whether it's going to be a overnight train or a bus or whatever it is, but we'll do it and we'll get you there, and it'll be fun and exciting. We never charge extra for those frills of the travel. I'll tell you, some of the best memories I have is on those dual tours getting from point A to point B. I mean, I remember once when it was pouring rain, cats and dogs, and we're trying to catch this train that was leaving Odessa for the next city, wherever it was, and we were late because we got stuck in Nikolai because of something that happened. And so the train was actually getting ready to depart, and one of our office managers was standing in front of the train, throwing her body in front of the train to stop the train from going. It is pouring rain up to your ankles with the flood of water, and we're hauling our suitcases and luggage through this to get on this train. The train's actually moving. We're throwing our suitcases on the train and jumping into this train, soaked to the bone when we get in there. We just looked at each other and just started laughing. I mean, there was like about 8 or 10 of us, and it was just, I mean, I think back to that, those moments. Those are things that you don't forget, and it's all part of this adventure, this that you're going to be going on, and it's just, you know, it's really cool. It's just so hard to explain when I'm just talking about it here. But All right. Do you recommend purchasing the airline ticket first and then scheduling the tour, or to see if there is a room on the tour first and trying to get airline ticket? I'm seriously interested in Cebu in August. You will love Cebu in August. Okay, that's going to be a great tour. As I said, all the women speak English, but you will have a buddy with you who will be with you throughout the socials, helping you to, again, navigate the tables, meet the women, help talk to the different women with you, help set up dates for you, all that stuff. And they take very good care of you in Cebu. Of course, in Davao, they do the same. I would sign up for the tour first, though, just to make sure. Before you buy the airline ticket, just go ahead, at least put your $475 deposit down for the tour. You don't have to pay for the tour in full, but get your $475 deposit down, right? Do what's called the open reservation. And when you make that open reservation, tell them it's for the Cebu August tour. And then they'll put that $475 deposit towards that tour so you have it reserved. Then you go buy your airline ticket. And then, you know, a couple weeks before the tour, just pay the tour off in full. And then, boom, you're ready to go. That way you save a little bit of money. You don't have to put it all up front, and you can get your airline ticket and have your spot reserved at the same time. Okay? All right. Will there be a seminar in the UK? I'm trying. I won't be probably this year. As I said, our schedule is pretty well set for the seminars. If we did something like that in the UK, then we may just throw that in for the UK. I would love to do one in the UK. I would love to do one in London. I really would love to do that. So we're trying. I want to get one in Australia as well. We have a lot of guys from Australia that go. So we're working on that. We have one in Montreal, so that'll be our international one so far. But that's right over the border, so that's, you know, we want to get one a little more far-flung. So we're going to work on that. Is the wing woman at the social included with the tour, or is that an additional cost? Scott, that is absolutely included in the tour, right? Which is a wonderful thing. So for that whole 4 or 5, sometimes 6 hours, depending on how long that social goes, that person is there with you throughout the whole event as your personal wing woman, right? I mean, she's there to help you with everything you need. And I'm telling you, those wing women, as I call them, are invaluable. I mean, they really help quite a bit. And if, you know, on the very slim possibility that you don't feel a good connection between you and that person that's helping you, all you have to do is go to the tour leader or one of the staff, the main staff member there, and say, you know, I think I might want to switch out because it's just, you know, this isn't working for me. We're just not communicating as well as I would like to. And they will take care of it. They will switch you with someone else that you're more suited to. And that can happen. It doesn't happen hardly at all, but it can, because we pick really good people, but it can happen because personalities can clash or something like that. So yeah, because that's important. That person will really help you. Now, when you're going to be using different wing women at the different events you go to, which I think is, again, extremely important. The last thing you want to do, guys, listen to me. If you don't take anything from what I'm going to say here tonight, listen to this. Because these are words of wisdom from someone who's been doing this for 23 years. The last thing you want to do is use the same person, the same interpreter throughout your whole stay. That's a huge mistake, okay? And here's why. If you're using the same person throughout your whole stay and having that person interpret everything that's happening with the woman you're or multiple women you're meeting, or the same woman you're meeting, and she's always doing interpreting for you constantly, or always assisting you, then everything that's happening to you is happening through her spin possibly, right? And to me, it's so important to put someone else in the mix, to mix it up, to use a different person. And when we do our socials, we go to different cities, and you're gonna have a whole different interpreter / wing woman, and that's great because now you're getting a different perspective, right? But let's say you're in the same city. On one of our other tours where we don't go to different cities, and you meet someone and you need an interpreter, let's say it's in Colombia, I highly recommend not using the same interpreter all the time, because, you know, it may be going great, but it may be because even subconsciously that interpreter is putting the spin on it. If it's, you know, another company, maybe it's a little more nefarious than that. Maybe on purpose they're putting the spin on it, right? So you want to be sure that you're using multiple interpreters to get a very broad view of what's really going on between you and her, and to make sure it's not all coming from that one person. Because when you're alone and you come back here in the States, let's say you do a fiancé visa, well, that interpreter is not going to be here to make sure that the conversation keeps going or to add her spin. Then you really fell in love with that more than the woman. So keep that in mind, guys. That's really, really important. And I've been preaching that for years and years and years. And I think it's a huge mistake to go over and be tied to one person the whole time, because that to me is like Disneyland for men. That to me is something that is just, you know, contrived to where, oh yeah, be with this person the whole time, they'll take care of you the whole time. Yeah, watch out for that. That's all I can say. All right. Will it be a summer case? Yeah. Does the price of the tour, does that include the round trip plane ticket? I was just wondering if it did. When I took the tour, I had to pay for the plane ticket. John, if that tour included also the price of the ticket, this would really be the best value on earth. I think it's already the best value of earth without including the plane ticket, and it does not include the plane ticket. But there's no way, with the prices that we charge, with everything that you get, with the socials and the hotel rooms and the transportation and all the women that you're going to be meeting and all that, there's absolutely no way that we could include the plane ticket. Now, years ago, the plane ticket was included for the Eastern Europe tours. Even years and years ago, we included it for the Latin American tours. But since then, the airlines have changed so much. We can't get the discounts that we used to get for the groups and things like that. It's just changed. So we decided to lower the price substantially of our tours, and then have you do your own tickets. And a lot of guys can get the tickets on points or whatnot, and so that's just the way that works now. So yeah. Okay, this is coming from Steven. What are the best ways to stay in contact with a lady you have fallen in love with? And that's kind of what we were talking. That was the whole theme of the show today, was how to, keep that fire going. Guys, you have so many more options than we did 20 years ago. When I met Tanya, my only option was calling her at $3 a minute or whatever it was, ridiculous with AT&T back then, or emailing her. And even she didn't have a computer at home. She didn't have email, so she had to walk through the snow when, obviously in the wintertime, but she had to walk to the office just to be able to read and reply to my messages. And she did quite often, but that was 20 years ago. Today, oh my gosh, you have Viber, you have Skype, you have WhatsApp, you have all these different apps that allow you to contact these women, not just to call for free, but to video, to FaceTime for free. Doesn't cost a dime. And so, yeah, to me, the best way, and this depends where you are. If you're in the Ukraine, the best thing to use is Viber, because everybody's on Viber over there, and you can use that. Some women like WhatsApp over there, and you can use that too. If you're in Thailand, you want to use what's called Line, L-I-N-E. Everyone over there is on Line. They don't use Viber, they use Line. If you're in China, it's, what is it, Kirk, WeChat? I think it's WeChat. So you're going to be using WeChat in China. So, it depends where you are. In Latin America, it's Viber or WhatsApp. I think WhatsApp is pretty popular in Latin America. So it just depends on where you are, what most of the people use and like. But the WeChat thing, from what my partner says, he was just in China recently, has all kinds of different options too. It's a really, really cool app. So these are things that, my gosh, you guys are spoiled compared to what we had to put up with 20 years ago as far as communication goes. It's just so much easier than it used to be, and that's wonderful for you guys. I think it's great. All right. I think we're getting close to the end here with the questions, or no? Okay, I'm going to try to go a little bit quick because Crooks can get mad at me here. You guys got to give it up to him. He does such a great job on these calls. He stays late and he does this, but he's married too, and he's going to get in trouble if we stay here too much later probably. So I'm just going to do a few more of these, and then I got to get Kirk home before I get yelled at. Plus, I have my wife at home who, if I stay too late, I may have to take one of these tours again. I don't, even though I love the tours and I love being on them, I don't want to have to go do that again, but I don't have to. Seminar discount. I want to book the Odessa tour, and you said there is not much time space left. The Miami seminar is at the end of the month. Is the discount still available if I booked it before the seminar? I will attend. Andrew, call me tomorrow, and let's talk about that, okay? I'm easy to get a hold of. My extension is 203. And if you're listening, call me, and I'll be happy to talk to you privately about that. We can see what we can work out, because I understand what you're saying there. So I want you to be able to take advantage of that. So call me and I'll see exactly what you're thinking, and we'll see if we can make that work for you so that you can get to the seminar, take advantage of the discounts, but also somehow reserve the spot on that tour, okay? You're going to love that tour. And by the way, Bud is going to be doing the seminar in Miami, and he's also going to be leading the tour right after that. So it'll be a great way for you to meet him too. And there's Bud, that smiling face. So yeah, all right. Oh no, it's not Eddie. Eddie, are you out there listening to us? Right? This is not Eddie. Oh my gosh. Eddie, I gotta tell you, well, first I'll read Eddie. So Dave, Big John, loved the trip to Odessa and Nikolai last May. I made the mistake of all the eggs in one basket, thinking I'm going on this September tour. I gotta tell you, Eddie was just a pleasure. There he is. There he is. There's Eddie. Eddie was a pleasure to have on the tour. Eddie was so great. And Eddie, I show that little video that we did, I show that at all the seminars I do because I think it's great what you said. He talks right there about being at the seminar in Texas, then going on the tour. Eddie was hilarious. Eddie missed, he's what we call a defector. So he defected from, because he did meet someone very special. And sometimes that happens, guys. You meet someone very special and you think you want to spend all your time with her, and he did that and it just didn't work out in the end. And that can happen, right? This is real life. This is not Disneyland for men. This is dating and real life. And so that happened, and Eddie kind of spent a lot of time with one person instead of doing a little bit more of the dating, and Eddie could have gone on 10 million dates because that's just how Eddie is if he wanted to, but he met someone and she didn't want him to go another social, so he didn't. But unfortunately, it didn't work out in the long run. And so Eddie's thinking, I guess, of going back again. Eddie, you got to call me. I'll be happy to talk to you again individually, and I want to know more about what happened, and happy to try to get you back in there. It's great that you're listening. Love you. You were great. Eddie was wonderful. Eddie kept disappearing. We never knew where Eddie was. You know, it's like, where's Eddie? Where's Eddie? He would be off with the women, then come in like 3 days later. Oh, it's okay. I was with her. It's like, yeah, you could have told someone, because guys, we do check on you once in a while to make sure you're still alive. And so Eddie, we were always worried about. Yeah, he's funny. Please make that UK seminar happen. I would love to, and I'm working on it. I really am. And the last question for the night is coming from Scott. Scott wants to know, what are the implications of bringing children back to the U.S.? If she has a younger child or children, how are the visas handled for her and her children? And are there issues with the children integrating with the U.S. life and culture? You know, that's a very, very good question. And I am, again, somewhat experienced at that as well, because when I met my wife, she did have a 2-year-old child. And I didn't even know that she had a 2-year-old child until, you know, a few hours after I met her, and I was already in love with her anyway. I was in love with her at first sight, so she could have had 10 children. I probably would have married her anyway. It didn't matter. But she did have a child, and he was 2. He is now like 23. He's actually off in Switzerland playing football right now. I'm so proud of him. He got a contract there, and he's playing in the American Euro League over there and doing fantastic. So congratulations, shout out to him. And you know, was a model child, graduated with honors and everything, and played football throughout all his university life. Wonderful kid. But getting back to your point here, is it difficult to bring someone back, or implications? Really not. If you do a K-1 visa, then the child's under 18, will attach to the K-1 visa as what's called a K-2. And basically the child will just mirror the woman's visa, right? So everything that happens with the woman's visa will happen with the child's visa automatically. And so it's really not that much more paperwork or that much more difficult to bring a child over. The one thing that you do want to, you know, be thoughtful of is what's going on with the father. You know, is the father in the picture? Is he still involved? Unfortunately, or maybe from your perspective, not so unfortunately, but many of the fathers are not involved with the children, as was the case, our case. You know, as soon as that child was born, unfortunately, the father was not involved any longer. A lot of that, you know, has to do with the economic impact or the economic difficulties and other things going on that, you know, this is just how it is. So if the father is not involved, and then it makes it much easier to make that permanent move. If the father is involved, think if you were to meet someone in California and move to New York, and if the father was involved, seeing the child, contributing financially to the child, then you would want to make some kind of arrangements to bring the child back maybe for the summers or things like that, and you can do the same thing here. All too often we see where the father is not involved at all, and the mother then can bring the child over without really any issues, and the child can stay permanently. But it's a good idea to get some kind of permission from the father, and a lot of times the father is more than happy to do so. If you say, look, you owe all this child support, blah, blah, blah. Just allow the child to go here permanently. It's going to be a better life for him, and we'll forgive the back child support and all this. And because nowadays, a lot of countries are enforcing that and will not allow you to have a passport if there is back child support and things like that. So there's different ways to do it, but it's really not that complicated if you do meet someone. And as far as the children, integrating into the U.S. Or whatever country you're taking him to, children are amazing at that. When my son came, he was 4 years old, and he just took to it like, fish to water. I mean, he didn't speak any English when he got here, and we dropped him off at daycare, which is a great place for a young child like that to learn English. And my wife was just so worried. She couldn't leave the place. I mean, she kept pacing around, and the place told them, the daycare facility said, just go. It's okay, Mom. He's going to be okay. We're used to this. We can take care of it. And she's like, well, what if he has to use the bathroom? Like, sign language. Don't worry. It works. We'll figure it out. And they did, and he did, and between that and TV and me talking, he was speaking better English than Tanya did in a matter of like 2 months. I mean, it was amazing. He picked up English so quick, and it was so fun for me because up until that point, I didn't speak Russian, and he would be saying things, and I always wanted to know what he was saying. I wanted to know what was going on in that little head of his, and then I finally got to understand him, and it just brought us closer and closer together. And it was a wonderful experience, one that, I've never, ever even thought about, regret or anything. It's just been great. So if she has a younger child or children, how the visa, so that we answered that. Yeah, so hopefully that helps. Scott, if you ever want to call and talk about that more, if you find yourself in that position and want more specific advice on how all that works, I'm happy to talk to you or anyone out there about that. And I do that quite often when someone's really going through that and they want to know exactly what steps and things to look out for. Because when the child's older, it's a little more difficult, not from a legal point of view of getting the child here, but from the integrating and the marriage and all that. Because if the child's, say, 9, 10, 11 years old, you have to win that child over, because if you don't, it can cause problems between you and your wife or your fiance if you don't even make it to that point. So, you really got to be careful about that and make sure that there's a good fit between all three of you. You're not just marrying her, you're marrying the child as well. And, that's important, because now you have two lives here that you're dealing with, and you want to make sure that you give that a lot of thought. And you put as much energy into the child as you do into her, because you're going to have to. You have this family now that you've got to take care of, and so keep that in mind. I mean, and all of you, it's a three-way deal there if there's the three of you involved, and you all have to put that energy into it to make it work. All right? Wow. It's just amazing. Now, it's almost like, God, a half hour over our normal time. I'm sorry about that, Kirk. But that was amazing. You guys had such good questions. I think it was fantastic. And Bud will be back next week, and I'm sure he'll stay more on point. He does a much better job at this than I do nowadays, but he's great. He'll be back next week. And, until then, guys, if you have any questions about the upcoming tours or anything like that, just feel free to give us a call. I'm here. I can answer questions. Kirk can answer questions. We have Anna. We have Robert. We have so many different people here that are more than happy to help you navigate this thing. It's not as hard as it seems, guys, to go on one of these tours. It's really easy. We make it really simple. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Everything's laid out for you. Just follow our direction and you'll be fine. Just like those guys right now in Peru having a great time. All right. Until next time, guys, thank you so much for being here tonight and all your questions. Really appreciate it. All right. Bye-bye.